As you both know, the press over here has been focused very much on Thomas Tuchel's first games as England coach. But the man he succeeded as coach for Bayern Munich, who is now the German national coach, is Julian Nagelsmann, one of the most fancied young coaches in Europe at the moment. How well is he doing, a young coach with young players?
Yeah, and I guess increasingly young players to a degree, because, of course, you've had a couple of retirements. You've had Toni Kroos and Thomas Müller. And in terms of experience, Germany have lost a lot in recent years. But I think it's less about the profile of the players, because, of course, there are some older ones that he's leaning on as well. Oliver Baumann is going to be the goalkeeper. He's announced him as his number one goalkeeper going forward, having rotated him and Alexander Nubel a little bit. Tim Kleindienst, who's just come into the team as the number 9, is already 29 years old, a pretty late bloomer in terms of his international debut. But I think it's about the energy that Nagelsmann brings to it and the ideas, really. I know it seems like an obvious thing to talk about energy because he's still only 37 years old. But I think what's an interesting thing for Germany is the fact we talked about Ranieri and short-term solutions before. I think a lot of us assumed that a Nagelsmann was a short-term solution for Germany to lead them into a credible Euro 2024, because we always assumed, well, why wouldn't he want to go off and do club management afterwards, get paid a lot more, and loads of big clubs would want him, and they would want him, and they did want him. But I think it's really interesting to see what this will do to international coaching, to see a guy who's still young, who's accomplished a fair bit already, and is desired by top clubs, but is saying, as he said, the job's not over. I'm going to commit to it until Euro 2028, which is actually like quite a long time, isn't it?
To be fair to Germany as well, like in some ways, Nagelsmann was unlucky, say, that his first campaign was a home tournament, because obviously a home tournament creates a different expectation, different pressure, and there's almost this sense that it should be the end of a journey because that's the one he should try and win. But that just wasn't to be. And to be fair, I think both he and the Federation have taken a very mature attitude, a very mature approach about this. Also, that tournament, right, if you just look at it in the coldest terms of, they went out with the quarterfinals, and I was at that game.
That was better than they expected, though, wasn't it?
Well, a couple of months before, definitely.
But like, I think a quarterfinal for one of the major nations, it's seen as what? Okay. But the context is actually all the more important. They're the only squad to take the eventual champions, Spain, to the distance. And they only went out to a late goal from a kind of, which is almost an opportunistic finish from Marino.
And they're still talking about the Cucurella handball.
Yeah.
I mean, and when I say they're still talking about it, he said in his press conference this week, the first thing I said to the players is, are you still thinking about that? Because I'm still thinking about that.
Good for him.
But it was, I mean, and even, to be honest, if it wasn't basically Germany, or like if you take this superficial view, if it wasn't Germany, and you think like the quarterfinals, they should be aiming for more of that. The very fact that they pushed Spain in this way, because Spain now do look suddenly, after their own fallow period of years of waiting, they've very abruptly become kind of, feels like the outstanding international team again. You could, maybe there's not a chasm, but they just look so more advanced than everyone else right now.
Isn't that Germany, because of the way that they won the Euros, though? I mean, I guess it goes back to what we were talking about with Germany. It's never just about the result at the top level of football. It's about the manner, isn't it? It's about what that suggests in terms of preparation in the recent past and the medium term and future. But I think that's the thing with Germany. You're right. They didn't just need an okay result and not to get shown up at these Euros. They needed to go out there and create a real connection with the home crowd, because there was the fact that if you go back over previous tournaments, and they'd had a poor record in recent tournaments for a long time. So you look at the dreadful defence of the World Cup in Russia in 2018. Then you look at the Euros in 2021, and they go out. Really, it's a 2-0 thrashing they get from England at Wembley. They're humiliated, really. And then leading up to that, you've got people think you've got the 2022 World Cup where Hansi Flick's much lampooned speeches in the dressing room at Qatar on that Amazon documentary, because again it's another big failure. There's the defeat to Japan. They get cut off really early, and because of that, and not just because of the way the team plays in Qatar and because the results aren't good, but because it's in Qatar and there's quite a lot of human rights pushback in Germany, to the extent that a lot of football fans don't even want to acknowledge the World Cup. You have this weird situation in 2022, in late 2022, where in all the major cities in Germany, where we expect in a World Cup there to be big screens in city squares showing the games, they don't have any of that. You could honestly go to Germany and think that the World Cup's not going on, and of course, it's slightly about
and that
Qatar.
Was just, oh, right. I was going to ask.
It is about Qatar, but it's also because of these years of failure, and these years of failure whilst having a pretty good squad just really create a chasm between the supporters and the team. And really, so the team didn't just need to come correct in terms of results and application in Euro 2024, because no one wants to get shown up at a home tournament. And I think every team that hosts a major tournament that's not absolutely on top of their game has this sort of sense of existential dread coming into it, as, are we going to embarrass ourselves? And you go back to you go back to Austria, for example, that petition from their fans saying we should withdraw from our own tournament because we're going to show ourselves up. But I think for Nagelsmann to be like young and fresh and desirable and say, you know what, no problem's too big. If you're worrying about how we're going to fit all these players in the same team, it's almost like, in some ways, and I'm not criticising anything Gareth Southgate's done for England, and in terms of the atmosphere he's created, it's brilliant. But Southgate would never do what Nagelsmann did in terms of tactics. He said, you know what, we've got two great number 10s, so let's put them both in the team. Let's put Wirtz and Musiala in the team together. And that is the kind of thing that warms people and gets them on side.
On that exact point as well, I think their opening statement was so important. So I was at that opening game, the Scottish game. I don't necessarily think Germany reached those heights again, but I'm watching, and maybe they're helped by kind of Scotland playing the way they did, but I don't think that was much to do. I think Germany just absolutely destroyed them. I thought it was,
and they needed that.
Yeah, I thought it was the outstanding performance of the tournament. But crucially, to your point, it immediately made me think after the game, I can't wait to see Germany again.
Yeah,
and even if they didn't reach those levels, but I think that's you can make an allowance for that because of how young the squad is, where it was. I think it was basically a vision of what is possible with Nagelsmann's Germany, and I think that's where I think that exactly reflects all of your points. And suddenly it creates, if they weren't ready for Euro 2024, it feeds into this excitement about what they can do in the future. And what are they going to do for 2026?
It's a funny thing, isn't it? Because after that, even after having said all that, it would have been completely normal if he'd have gone, oh, well, that was a great time. Right, I'm going to go and take the Dortmund job or whatever. I don't think anyone really beats up on him for that. But for him to go, and why you've got the atmosphere that you've got at the moment going into these Nations League quarterfinals with Italy, which of course is a little bit more, because of course it's not only Italy versus Germany, which is huge anyway, it's for the right to host the Final Four tournament, so there's a little bit extra to it, so you can recreate that summer feeling if you're Germany. It's the sense of, I still want to be part of this. Like, I could have other jobs, but I want to be part of this because this is so fun.
Yeah, well, maybe, and there are comparisons, I think, with the Claudio Ranieri conversation we were having a moment or two ago, not least that both Nagelsmann and Claudio Ranieri are the conduits, like you say, between the fans, the disaffected fans, and the club or the team.
Just on one wider point in relation to kind of that he could have gone to Dortmund or something like that, I think there is something to make, and I know we're going to discuss this elsewhere, but one of the reasons that maybe international football is seen as kind of falling behind tactically or whatever, the club game, is because essentially it doesn't have the same resources.
Yes.
So it can't employ the best coaches. And Nagelsmann would have been one of those. But of course, where's the next tournament? It's what every federation is seeing as, and I think a lot of individuals as well, as the most commercially attractive tournament in history. At the exact same time as football is about to make, or is currently currently making a massive push into the biggest commercial market, given that we've got the Club World Cup in the USA this year. So I do think that is kind of relevant to a lot of this.